here we are. You're Blake, and you're juror number
14.
14. What did you know about the case before you got called in for jury duty?
Nate, almost nothing. Almost nothing. So maybe 3 years prior, walking through my front room, and my kids have the TV on. The news is on, and I just see two faces, female and a male, and they say something about kids that were involved, and I just stopped and looked at it, and I kept walking, and that was it. That truly was it. I'm not a true crime guy. I don't follow that kind of stuff, and so I really didn't know. I had no idea what we were getting ourselves into, right? I didn't know. Yeah.
So you go in and you have the original group voir dire and then one-on-one. And did you want to be on the jury? Did you care? Did you have any opinions either way?
So Nate, I'll never forget this. When we walked in and there was 50 of us, and this was probably the second or the third time I had been in court for the selection process. And I saw him sitting at the table. I got stiff and I went, okay, this is it. This is it, Blake. Even though I really didn't know much of anything about this case, when I saw his face, I went, okay, this is going to be the big one. You ready for this? And then the thoughts start. What if you do? What if you don't? Who knows how long this is going to go? But I safely assumed it's probably going to be a big deal. So I did, Nate. I did. So about 12 years ago, I was on a grand jury. We met every Tuesday, and I was on Team A for 6 months. And so some days you'd see 2 cases. Some days you'd be there till 6 or 7, you'd see 5 or 6 cases. And they only deal with those 3 really nasty types of felonies. So saw a lot of things, heard a lot of things, horrific things there, which kind of prepared me for this. So when we came in and we were the 50, I did.
Wow.
I did. I wanted to be part of it, and had no idea, you know, what was going to entail for those next 10, 11 weeks, but I did.
So it kind of prepared you for it, but was it what you thought it'd be or worse?
Nothing like I thought it would be. So, good and bad. We were dealing with the worst of humanity. The things that we saw and heard were absolutely horrific. However, we were surrounded by the best marshals you could ever imagine. Phenomenal prosecution team, phenomenal law enforcement team that sat there and supported the prosecution, supported the witnesses. And this group of original 18 that I was with, they're like family. And then 3-4 weeks into it, one of our compatriots got a stomach flu and he had to be excused. And then it was us 17. So through the midst of these evil and horrific things that we were seeing and hearing, there was a lot of good too, a lot of good that I'm only now able to process. You didn't really see it then. You saw bits and pieces of it, but now that I've had time to unpack some of this stuff, there was a lot of good there.
Right, and I imagine you'll be unpacking a lot for
I think
a
so.
long time.
I think so.
How would you function at the end of the day? Did you try to do work? Did you try to read? I mean, I'm sure you live about 30 minutes, 40 minutes from the courthouse. That drive home, are you just thinking about everything from that day?
I was. So my wife and I joked initially, and I just said, look, sweetheart, we're going to have to kind of have a different evening schedule. So she'd get home either before me, about the same time, and she would usually just text, "Hey, how was the day?" And it would be either be a thumbs up or it'd be a sad face. And so she kind of knew how the evening was going to be. And Nate, it was mainly when I came home, I just needed about an hour and a half to think this stuff through. And then I was usually pretty good. I'd come outside and work, go into the garage and work, maybe run down to the gym, work out for a bit. Hockey playoffs were on, so there was something that I could occupy my mind with. But early on, before it really started getting heavy, luckily my wife and I kind of put a little plan together on how we were gonna, say, deal with this, but just how to respond when I came home.
That's smart. That's smart because
it's her idea. So
Well-
yeah, I can't take credit for it because she was more of the one going, look, you can't talk about this stuff. You'd be driving home for 30, 35 minutes and you're just rewinding these things that you saw and heard, and we can't talk about it as a jury pool either. You can't believe what you're hearing and seeing, and then you come back into a room and you're staring at each other and you have to talk about how your kids and your weekend and we're going to go fishing and so I found out early on that I needed to have kind of a system that worked for her and I. And it did.
Yeah.
It did.
What was the worst part?
There were two. The photos of the kids. I have two kids of my own. They're 25 and 21. I can't fathom that. I can't. And then the victim's statements on Friday. You are 20, 30 feet from family members that are weeping openly in court. We got it lucky. We were able to go home. We still have our family members. They don't. That's going to take me a while to, I don't want to say get over, but understand those victim statements. And bless his heart, Judge understood this was getting really heavy in the courtroom and gave us a break at the appropriate time. When we came back in for the rest of them, I brought 2 more tissue boxes because girl next to me on both sides, it was brutal. Yeah. Absolutely brutal. Not only are your peers and you're trying to keep everything in, but the family members that are just on the other side of the gallery are just weeping openly. Right. Those 2 events were, had no idea.
Right. You said it'll take you a while to process the victim impact statements. I don't know if anyone can ever process those photos. And very few people saw them in this trial. And you were one of the very few.
Yeah, and here's where I have to just give so much credit to the Fab Four, I call them, the 4 bailiffs that really took care of us day in and day out. They knew. They warned us on Friday, hey guys, this is what's going to be coming up on Monday. We came in Monday morning before they even checked the hallways for us to go on bathroom breaks, get water and ice, and kind of this normal routine that we had in the morning. They warned us then they warned us before we even lined up out in the hallway. So these guys are professionals. They really, really know what they're doing. And not only the preparation for it, after we saw those photos, they understood. They stopped me and another one of our jurors in the hallway and said, Blake, you just let us know when you're ready for us to come back in. We're going to give you some extra time, because Nate, not only are half of us weeping in the jury box when they opened the door to let us go back out into the hallway. The rest of them outwardly were sobbing. You could hear it all down the hallway. And then when we got into the jury room, it was horrific. But again, the positive, the good, was that these bailiffs knew that. They were one of them had some experience with a large trial like this, and so he was really good about it. And then I kid you not, later that afternoon, before we were ready to leave, we had all kind of settled down a little bit and acknowledged, semi-processed what we had just saw, and then the following day we were good. We were good. I can't say enough about those other 17. I can't. I miss them. I do. But those were the two events that you don't want anybody to see that.
Right. Was there a moment where you said, okay, he's guilty? Or was it an accumulation of things?
You know, the first 3 weeks was just law enforcement, and then they brought in some of the FBI to show the cell towers. Early on, you still didn't know what else they were going to bring in. So it took, for me, probably 4 weeks, 5 weeks. And when I say that, when the texts start coming in, and people are who they are when they send email and text to each other. That's who you are. When we started seeing those things, and then they would support that with GPS, whether it's a burner phone or not, where these certain people are at certain times of the day on certain dates. Okay, then I could see the picture they're trying to paint, the dots they're trying to connect. And it was probably 6 weeks in, 5, 6 weeks in, that I went, okay, I see it now. Because by that time, you had had all of those close inner circle witnesses that were verbally stating, he said this, he said this, he said this, and then they were backed up with emails and texts. It wasn't just someone's opinion, maybe they're lying, maybe they're not. No, it was supported by, oh my gosh, he really did say that. And he really does think this. And he really is trying to manipulate and make this happen and this plan. And so it was probably, 4 or 5 weeks in.
What about one witness? Was there one that really stood out to you above the rest that kind of sealed the deal?
I forget the gentleman's last name. FBI, I think his first name was Doug
Hart.
Doug Hart. His communication of the information that he had gathered was, I mean, he's an orator. He is a great speaker. Optics are phenomenal. But his supports, and I know that's why they brought him back a second time, his supports and the way he could explain it. And it wasn't, for whatever reason, his slideshow or presentation didn't have 19 pieces of information on it, and you're going, what was that?
Right. It was clean.
I have a question.
Yeah.
It was very clean, and it was very precise. And when you're dealing with that much information, really, we as the jury, we just want to know dates, times, who was it, where were they, and then we'll draw the conclusion. He was outstanding.
Were you anxious for a really strong defense? I mean, the whole time prosecution's going on, you're like, all right, let's be open-minded and see what they have. And in turn, once the defense was presented, what were your thoughts?
Kept waiting, Nate. Kept waiting. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? And I'll jump ahead. One of the phrases that we had to agree to in the death sentencing portion was mitigating circumstances. And we went around the room and we went around the room and we talked it and we fleshed it out. And I said, okay, got a column, it's a Chad column. Are there any pluses in there? And we went around the room, no, 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 no. Defense did not ever paint a picture of any good, positive, moral behavior that went on from October of 18 through June of 2020. None at all. And I was frustrated because there was, well, we're going to focus on the paintball gun and we're going to focus on this and we're going to, that had nothing to do with the facts and the evidence. So it was unfortunate. I just kept waiting and waiting for some other piece of information that would maybe at least cause you pause and make you think maybe a little differently. All right, okay. Maybe he was bamboozled. Maybe he was taken advantage of. Maybe he had to, well, they never showed that, ever. And so yes, I was waiting and waiting. And then, Nate, to be completely honest, after a while, you're just irritated. You're just annoyed. Because that's the other piece of it. So much of what they should be doing is optics. Don't lean into the microphone and yell in it into where it's buzzing in the speakers when you're trying to make a point. That's annoying. That's really annoying. Just make your point. Be professional. Be somewhat caring and try to connect with your jury. I felt like there was anger and there was arrogance, and then there'd be times where he would look at certain jury members. They didn't like that, man. That made them very uncomfortable. And then he'd pop his head back and look at the gallery and swing his head around.
One juror in particular I noticed he looked at a lot.
She didn't like that. And we noticed that. And during our 12 deliberations, she brought that up. And we brought it up too. And so, yeah, we were hoping, and it just became annoying after a while. And then there was such a stark contrast during his closing, because he would talk quietly and kind of walk around and maybe make a little eye contact with you. But again, there was no substance in there to at least make us think, okay, maybe the guy this, maybe that. There was none. Mm-hmm. There's none at all.
What did you think of Chad's kids testifying and their testimony?
Sad. Sad, especially with Garth. Very sad. Could tell that kid did not want to be there. He did not want to see the inside of a courtroom. And he was trying his best to just get the words out. And the first 3 minutes, he messed up the truck in the car, and Pryor had to ask him 3 or 4 times to kind of straighten it out and confirm, and then he finally got it straight. And Emma was very scripted. Robotic. I felt sorry for them. I really did. As a dad, you don't want to do that to your kids. You don't want to brainwash your kids. I did. I really, really did. Now, I listened to what they had to say. Don't know if I believed it, but very unfortunate. It was. It saddened my heart.
So you mentioned when you went back to deliberate, you had the positive things about Chad Column, and there wasn't anything there. And some of the other jurors have said that the guilt, not guilty, really wasn't an issue.
It was not at all. So Wednesday, after everybody rested, jury instructions were given, and then the 5 alternates were named. They walked the 5 down the hallway into a completely separate room, and they brought us 12 into our normal room. We were brokenhearted, man. We love those guys.
I was going to ask, it's kind of like a family, right?
It is, Nate, and it absolutely broke our heart. And it didn't matter who the 5 were going to be. You wanted your whole team in there. And so this was the first time that we ever were able to talk to each other now. And so we had jury instructions, we had the counts, and we were so overwhelmed that we could talk now. This is what we did. We brought a couch in. It's kind of a long story. Brought our couch in, and there's a really long table and a small table. We pushed that long table up against the window. We brought the chairs, and we sat in a circle like we were sitting around a fire. And we just talked for 2 hours. We just talked. Got things off our chest. We laughed. We teared up. But we were able to unwind finally. 2 months deliberation. And there's all these things that you remember and you want to talk about. And the other thing about this too is that the other 16 would agree to, nobody was really talking over anybody. No one would interrupt. No one would, hey, your opinion doesn't. We just spoke freely. And so for that first Wednesday afternoon when they rested, we finally were able to just be ourselves and talk about it. So we knew what we had to do Thursday. We knew what was up and coming. We had read jury instructions before we left that night. We read through the counts, and we just said, look, let's save that for Thursday. Okay, we needed that. Mentally, you're exhausted, and we had no idea what was coming up on Friday with these victim statements. And so that was what we did Wednesday, and got back to the hotel and tried to think through more of this stuff. And then Thursday when we came back, that's when we started in the morning.
Okay, so you say you get back to the hotel, but you're sequestered.
Yeah.
And you can't do really anything. I mean, you could do a few things. Tell me about that experience.
Sure. So the first night, not only do you have 2 of the main 4 bailiffs, you've got other sheriffs and Boise PD there that are up on our hallway. And again, 5 are down the hallway, nowhere near the 12. They are completely on a different leg hallway of the hotel, same floor. And then the other 12 were down here. And so they were trying to get our phone calls. 10, 15 minutes, you have to use their phone. You have to crack your door, speaking on speaker with them this close, right? And we joked with them. The bailiffs joked with us. It was a good time. And so then maybe they could get you down to the gym. There was a pool, maybe get some pool time. And so the first night was really hit and miss because it was the first night for the law enforcement and for the bailiffs to kind of run this through and see how it was going to go. So the next night on Thursday, bless their hearts, man, when we were done on Thursday, they were able to take us out to a park, have dinner there, just get out and walk. Again, can't talk about it, can't discuss it. And this time they allowed the 5 and the 12 to be together. But again, your bailiffs are with you everywhere you go. Yeah. And so we're able to have a bite to eat, get outside, take a walk, came back to the hotel. Thursday night I was exhausted. I could barely even stand anymore.
That was verdict day.
It was. And so we were just exhausted. I think a bunch of them went down to a game room and watched a movie. until 10. I think curfew was 10 o'clock. And then Friday was the heavy day. And when we were done with that, came back to the hotel, I think finished the rest of the movie, and they allowed us to come on back down and finish that out. And so, it's you're stuck in your room, and you better have some movies or some books to read. And but they would let us come out and say hi to so and so and pop your head out, and it wasn't as bad, I think, as maybe what most thought, or maybe what people hear. But it was just those 3 nights.
So you talked about the heavy day being the victim impact statement day, and then you all have to go back into that room and decide. And was the mood still heavy when you walked back there?
Yeah. Luckily, Judge Boyce split those up. We came in, kind of gathered ourselves, and I think lunch was ready, so we had lunch. And again, filling your stomach tends to help, right? And so we went back in after that, and I think maybe we heard 3 or 4 more. And then there were more jury instructions, and then the death sentencing counts, and then we came back in. And so Friday we hammered it out. I think we got back into our room 3:30, maybe even as late as 4. I remember it was later in the day. And so, Nate, we went through jury instructions, and with the death sentencing part, there's 2 parts to it. There's part 1 and there's part 2. And so we read through those, read the definitions, went around the table, and that was part of the time when I went, okay, mitigating factors, here it is in part B, part 2, and we tried to just find some nugget or element that was brought up that could show this guy in a favorable light, and there was just nothing there. So during that time, Friday night, we had a question about one of the instructions. So our 4-person, what a sweetheart, absolute sweetheart. She would have a form, fill it out, give it to one of the marshals. They take it to the judge. Judge brings it back, and just to confirm the question that we had about this portion of the Part B. And he confirmed, yes, this is what it means. So,
because the language there was a little like double negative.
Double
like
negatives,
a little
man.
Confusing. Even when the verdict was being read, people are like,
Yes.
what? And then he finally said, okay, in layman's terms.
Right, and we were like,
yeah.
whew.
As where the rest, what there wasn't like, I want to be sure I got this right. I mean, I was afraid to report anything until he said that.
Right. And that is what we were asking.
Right.
Because could you imagine us all standing in there when he reads it and it doesn't mean what we think it means?
Oh, man. You have to pause. Hold on.
Oh, man. So we, Friday night, we made sure that's what it was. And Nate, we had decided Part A and Part B Friday night. But because of the heaviness and the seriousness of that, we said, let's sleep on it. And one of the jurors next to me, absolute sweetheart, she just said, look, I can't go back in there tonight. And I said, I don't blame you. I don't think I can either. So she said, can we just please sleep on it, make sure we're all in agreement when we come back in the morning? And that's what we did. I think we left there 7:30, 7:45 Friday night, and came back in Saturday morning. We talked about it some more. Everybody still felt the same. 1 or 2 of the folks, we just had some questions that we wanted to work through and kind of get to point A to point B, and we did. We let them talk and kind of, work those things out, and they felt comfortable with, okay, that makes sense. And that's the thing. You've got to give people the freedom to be able to speak and explain maybe what they're struggling with or what doesn't make sense to them, instead of, well, no, this is what we just, no, just relax. We got time. This is a person's life. So let's just make sure everybody's comfortable with it. So we came in Saturday morning. We talked it through for maybe another hour and a half, and then our foreperson signed that document, and told bailiff, and bailiff told the judge, and that was it.
And then what was it like walking in that courtroom one last time?
So walking in on Thursday, when we had the first verdict, I could hear my blood pulsing in my ears.
Really?
My heart was coming out of my chest. Because not only was the gallery full, and Nate, they're all looking at us. I was anticipating how people were going to respond when they heard the verdict. And that's emotional. So that Thursday and that Saturday was unreal. Unreal. We were even more nervous Saturday, because now you're sentencing someone to death. Right. And you got to be okay with that. You have to be okay with that. And we were. There's the questionnaire they have you fill out in the very beginning. A lot of the folks on our team were brought in one-on-one and had that question asked specifically to them. I didn't, but you got to be able to do that. And so coming in Saturday, like I'd mentioned to you earlier, part of the day Saturday is still a blur for me, because there were so many ups and downs, and your body responding to all of these nerves and anxious. And not only that, oh God, I got to leave these people now. I got to leave these people that I've spent 10 weeks with. So those 2 days, Thursday and Saturday, for me were just absolutely intense.
What was that drive home like Saturday?
It was quiet. Tears. I didn't want to leave the parking garage. There were 5 or 6 of us that left our cars in the garage. Some had family pick them up there at the hotel, and 1 or 2 took an Uber. I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave them. We were shaking hands and we were hugging, and I was talking to one of the bailiffs that I became very close with. It's a quiet ride home. Very quiet ride home. And you truly can't process all of that, and it'll probably take another 2 or 3 months before it finally sets in.
Right.
Truly what was done in such a really short amount of time. From Wednesday night, all we were really doing was just unloading and venting, and finally it was really Thursday through Saturday that the deliberation and the negotiation and the serious talks and listening, and so it was just those 2.5, 3 days.
Right. What would you say is the biggest thing you learned or came to appreciate?
The goodness in people. I from everyone, to the jury commissioner, to his staff, and I just can't say enough about those 4 marshals that we got to bust chops with, and they'd make fun of us, and we'd turn around and make fun of them, and we could laugh and joke and horse around, but on a dime, they could stop and do what they needed to do on the comms, and we're clearing the hallway, and we're doing this and we're doing that. And like I'd mentioned before, prosecution team, all those law enforcement agencies, from the feds, Arizona, Utah, dealing with and watching and seeing the worst of our humanity, but then being surrounded by all of these solid, good, honest people, including my 17 peers. There's got to be a system when they pick these jurors, because Nate, they couldn't have done a better job. And I don't mean that we're so bright and we're, arrogance and we know everything. And no, we got along so well. We were truly concerned about the people we were sitting next to. We enjoyed being with each other. Maybe some awkward moments and there were sad moments, but it was filled with joy and laughter and just good old-fashioned humor and fun. I emailed Courtney,
the judge's attorney.
Attorney, and I just emailed Miss Blake today. Mm-hmm. And I told them both the same thing, that you folks have restored my faith in humanity. Because truly, after weeks and weeks and weeks, you don't know what's coming next week or the next day, and then you think you've heard and saw the worst of it, and then, oh my gosh, here comes another day. I just cannot believe what I just saw and heard. You kind of start wondering a little bit.
Right.
But the people that were around us were solid, honest, really good people. And so I was able to take away, there's still some really good ones out there, for sure.
Would you want to talk to Chad Daybell?
I would.
You would?
I would.
And what would you say?
Why? Why? Why'd you do that to those kids? Why'd you do that to Tammy? Why were you involved with Charles? Those are children. Why would you do that? The level of deceit that he was under, and probably still is under, is unfathomable. I would. Absolutely I would. I'm not going to get a straight answer.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, do you think you get an answer?
No, because he's still in his state of delusion.
Do you believe he believes it? Do you believe he believes the religious stuff?
Some of it. Some of it. Others, it's just to get what he wants. It's pure manipulation. I had one of our discussions after we could discuss this was, why do you think his two oldest kids behave the way they do? I think it puts fear in them. I think it's fear. It's intimidation. I didn't see a lot of love and compassion and mercy and grace from those kids. It was just, yeah, I would.
Would you serve on another jury?
In a heartbeat. I would do this all over again. It was an honor and a privilege to be on that jury. No doubt.
Anything you want to add?
I just want to thank the prosecution and law enforcement for all of the hours and days and years they put in to bring this case to trial. For all the overtime, for all the sleepless nights, for all of the tears, for all of the emotional ups and downs. I want to thank them, because I think for some or most, it's, oh, this is done, just let's move on to whatever the next case is or whatnot. But they need recognition. They need to be thanked. And again, I'll go back to our bailiffs again, our marshals. These are the kind of guys that you would ask to be your kids' godparents. Mm-hmm. They're that quality of people. I think that's right. How I'll put a period on the end of that sentence.
Thank you so much, Blake. That was great.
It's been a pleasure.